First of all, thank you to Tristan, Christine, and Philippe for the invitation. It's very nice to be with you and to share this kind of ideas that are illuminated for the issue that we are thinking. So I have to apologize myself because I have to leave at 6 p.m. because I have to take my daughter to the swimming pool. I'm sorry, but these times is difficult. Well, I will start. First of all, I have to say that in Latin America, we are living in a very difficult time in terms of economic and political stages. But first of all, I want to share my approaches to think platforms. And I think that we have to first think in world economy. Of course, Braudel gives us that important view to understand capitalism. And I think that the last stage of capitalism is global capitalism. And the new driver for that global capitalism is the platforms and data, for sure. We have to think in world system too. As you know, Wallerstein gave us that idea to try to understand at the same time the world economy. And Armand Martelart talked about world communication. And I think that is the other key to try to understand our societies, our contemporary societies. In fact, I think that world communication is now in the center of the world system and the world economy. It's where the battles are taking place in terms of ideology. It's where the discussion to have a better world or a different world is taking place. So that's my view to try to understand what is going on with platforms is these approaches, and certainly history is the key in my point of view to try to think continuities and change. As I told you, these are some remarks about Latin America. It's more in terms of the political systems and societies that we are living at this moment. And I just want to underline the mediatization of politics and political polarization and populism is taking place in a hardus stage. So this is important to take in account to try to understand the importance of media reform, because the battle is there, the ideology is there. And we have to think now how our communication systems, what are the characteristics of our communication systems. As we know, is in a mutation in flux because of the social media and the platforms, and our communication systems are clientelist, as you know. We have a weak public service. Our communication systems are high concentrated, and the good things of our communication systems is the possibility of the emergence of the community media that finally is giving voice to many communities that doesn't have it. But we have to think it in this mutation in terms of new media and old media. We have always to think in those parameters in Latin America. Other things that are important to recall and to label it is the important that is happening with the fake news. There is a lot of fake news in our communication systems, and we are trying to finally to shape and model it our media reforms in our states. But let me go backwards And remember, in the 70s, in Latin America was a hub, for the idea of the national communication policies. And in those years, the main spirit or the main claims that was made during those years was the democratization of the communication systems, the cultural autonomy, that it was very important to have national communication policies, to have cultural autonomy, and of course, to think in development. And here, in that context, it was when the cultural imperialism idea of Herbert Schiller taking place, but it was product of a discussion in Latin America with many Latin American scholars, and Schiller made it that point, or raised that point. And I would like to recall that concept, and I will quote Herb Schiller. The concept of cultural imperialism describes the sum of processes by which a society is brought into the modern world system, and how its demanding stratum is attracted, pressured, forced, and sometimes driven into shaping social institutions to correspond to or ever promote the values and structures of dominant trend of the system. That was the idea of Schiller in the late 70s. So I would like to say that in Latin America, we are trying finally to build our communication system or our media systems. As you know, we have these local players, or these national champions, media national champions in the area, and these actors were the entities to shape the contents of US. It was a filter. There were the filter of the contents of the US. But now the equation is different. Who is filtering the nationals or the communication system and news is the GAFA entities. Now I am trying to elaborate how the national communication system is in relation with these global tech companies that now are shaping in some way how we are consuming news and how we are consuming content. I am not going to go too deep in this data. It's just to have an idea of the importance of these big players. And I will go just to this idea that I think it's very important to see the concentration of the platforms in Latin America. As you can see, in terms of the browsers, this is the market share for Latin America. So Google, it's concentrating the 82% of every search that we do. So this is the data that they are getting it's very impressive, as you can see. This is one layer of this kind of concentration of these platforms. I am trying to show you just the macro label on the macro data. This is just the browser, and in terms of the search engine, the concentration it's worst. 97% of every search that we do in Latin America goes through Google. So as we can see, we are in a worst scenario than we were in the 70s or than we were before. And the power that these companies are building, it's more than obvious. And the other data that I would like to show you in terms of concentration is the social media. And the social media, as you can see, Facebook is the social media that has more market share in the region. As I told you, the thing is that these big platforms are shaping our consume of news, and the fake news goes to those platforms too. So how to moderate this scenario, how to moderate the national scenario and the global scenario. So the challenges are very, very big to try to address this new kind of hybrid communication system that we are having in our region. But we have to say that it's more complicated because the polarization that we have in terms of politics is giving us a difficult position to try to address these important situations that the platforms are reshaping or are changing our communication systems. As you know, the datification is another point that has to be at least regulated in terms of transparency. We have to ask transparency to these big players, but it's not going to be something that will be nation by nation. It has to be a global regulation. There is another things that are happening with platforms, and we have to ask what is going on in this scenario. For example, if you see how platforms are using people, or how people is using platforms to make money, we can think in another concept or in another characterization. If we replicate the idea of Castells of mass self-communication, but we are seeing some kind of mass self-commodification with the YouTubers, with the cosplay, and other kind of things that we are seeing with the use of platforms. So, as you can see, media policy and regulation in these times are very challenging, but it's something that we have to do, and it's something that it has to be regionally, globally, and nationally. It has to be in different levels, because otherwise it's not going to change this situation that we are having in those years. So sorry for the quick presentation, but I have to finish here. I'm sorry for the difficulties that I have in this moment. Sorry.